Hello, welcome. Happy Wednesday afternoon. Wednesday, February 12th, 4 p.m. Central Standard. Yeah, it's snowing. I'm going to have to go home after this and shovel my sidewalk so that I can save some money on rent. But I hope you all are cozy wherever you are. Safe and checking in on your loved ones and yourself. So that's what I've been trying to do these days a lot more. So I'm really excited for today. I'm excited about the content we're doing today. We're going to be opening up the latest single from Luke Titus. It's titled Above Us. And it's really, really, really amazing. If you know Luke, you're familiar with just how exceptional he is. And I feel like he has spent a lot of time developing his sound. He's obviously developing his craft. But he has such a specific, kind of sound and vibe. And so when he hit me up to do some mixing for him and mastering for him, I, really wanted to be sensitive to kind of how specific his sound is, and make sure I'm matching that, but also offering, something more for him as his mixing engineer, because he's in his own right absolutely a phenomenal producer. And even listening to the demos of this that he was sending me before we got into mixing, it was like, wow, damn, dude, that sounds really good. So, it was very fun to mix this for him and with him, with all that being said. So, it's out now. So go watch the music video. It's beautiful. Go stream it. Go follow him on socials if you don't already. It's out via Super Records. So definitely a family release, family affair. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's a new single coming out at the end of the month, so look out for that too. I also worked on that, and lots more down the pipeline that I'm excited about. But let's jump into the session. We can talk about the session a little more and talk about vibe, all those things. So here we go. Boop. Cool. So this is my Pro Tools mix session, the session that we bounced his final mix from. It is mix 7, so we went through 7 different revisions. I guess that means 7. Yeah. 1 through 7. Sometimes when you're going through mix revisions, I always make a save as, so that, if we get down into it and realize, oh, you know what, that suggestion I had or whatever, that actually doesn't work. I really liked this aspect of mix 2. I can literally import the information from mix 2 into mix 7. And we can kind of start back from where we were. So I have little save point markers as we go for safety. So I'm zoomed way in on my waveforms, as you can see, because there are some elements that are really quiet. Were recorded really quietly. So that's kind of what they look like right now. So Luke kind of does a lot of production, a lot of kind of summing, processing, things like that on his own. And then he sent me all of these stems to do the final mix of. So this is what I have. I have a kick drum channel, a snare drum channel, an overhead channel, 2 shaker channels, a shaker channel, a bongo channel, and a percussion FX channel. Bass guitar channel, guitar bus channel, 2 different synthesizer channels, And then a bunch of different vocal channels. So we've got tons of like BGV group vocals, different sections. We have them labeled as like C, B, and A sections because they kind of serve different purposes, each different group of background vocals. So I kind of labeled them that way just to make them easier for me to manage. These are more like lyrical background vocals. And then our lead vocals right here. And I have everything kind of put into their own little like folders. Now the folders aren't doing any routing. They aren't doing anything like that. It's just, honestly, it's easier for me to look at. I can close the folder and then, simplify what I'm looking at a little bit or open it. And then also when I go to bounce different versions of the mix, so say an instrumental version, an acapella version, stems of the mix, so all the drums, all the percussion, all the bass, I can go and just solo or mute those folders. So that's kind of some of the basic ideas going on here. If you've been watching a bunch of these videos, you know that I have somewhat basic routing, but do some different types of routing in my sessions. So you can see my drums are going to bus 9 and 10, which is this aux track right here, labeled DB for drum bus. So all the drums are coming to this aux. They're being processed together, and then they're going out bus 17 and 18. And you can see all of my other instruments pretty much are all going out 17 and 18, which is this bus right here labeled MB, music bed. So I'm processing the music bed separately from the vocals. And then that finally goes out bus 21 and 22 with most of my vocals. Some of the vocals also go through like a little aux track for group processing. 21, 22, going to my mix bus. There's a little bit of processing on my mix bus, and then finally printed on this mix 7 print track. So this is my send so that you guys can hear the audio. It's a separate send, but there's nothing going on this track. Basically, I have a loudness meter, so I can tell how loud everything is, where my peaks are, what my average loudness is, but generally there's nothing happening on the print track because I just want to hear what the mix bus is printing. So and I want to print all the processing that's happening in the mix bus. So that's the routing. There's a couple other little things we'll get to when we get to it, but let's do this. I have Luke's rough mix, so the demo that we started with, and I have, of course, the final mix. So I'm going to do this. Let's jump between the rough mix. You can tell it's rough mix because it says rough, and the final mix. I'll relabel this final mix. It's safe to label it final mix because it's already distributed. There's no way there's going to be a final version 2 master final v6 file. That's the way I get around that. If you're ever mixing and you're frustrated because it's like, oh damn, I already named this final mix, but I have to adjust this one thing. Don't ever name anything final. Just name it the number or the date or whatever works for you. I personally do mix 1, mix 2, mix 3, mix 4, mix 5, mix 6, mix 7, etc., etc. Knowing that the most up-to-date mix is going to be the final mix. But c'est la vie. Those are my 100 cents. Let's listen to something. So, yeah, I'm going to circle this chorus right here. Let me get into grid mode. Perfect. So when I press play, we're going to be listening to the final mix, and then you're going to see me flip to the rough mix, and then that will be the rough mix. I've roughly volume matched them, so their volume is out of the equation, but you can kind of hear how the mix is different from the rough. So here we go.
Rain on these eyes, but there's no time.
Cool. So to me, this is a really good example of a really good rough mix, a very ready to be properly mixed production. Because it's, it's balanced. You can hear everything. You know that the parts are all there. There's no fixing that needs to happen, in terms of arrangement or, using the wrong instrument or missing something from the mix. But it's cloudy. You don't have direction. You don't have like that extra thing that makes it sound like not a demo, and so this is my mix, so obviously I think I did a good job. I guess that's not super obvious, but take my own 2 cents for what it's worth. But I think what this mix is offering is a much bigger, more open, more polished, more comfortable listening environment, and really highlights all the elements of each instrument a little bit more, so it's more impactful and more representative of the song. So less lo-fi. Yeah, but still maintaining the vibe, the vintage element, the intimacy that I think is really valuable to this music and to Luke, who he is as a person. So yeah, cool. So speaking of that, Luke is a multi-instrumentalist, but also very much a drummer. And I think when people think of Luke, they think of his drum sound. So Luke does things a lot differently than what you might expect drummers to do, where it's like, oh, I have a kick in mic, a kick out mic, a snare top mic, a snare bottom mic, a mic on each rack tom, a mic on each floor tom, stereo overheads, maybe some room mics, all those things. And it's like, oh, I've got 16, 20 mics on the, kit. Luke is a lot more, what's the word? Economical, maybe, with his miking setup. I think he probably, I'm putting words in his mouth now, but views the drums as an instrument as opposed to, the kick drum's an instrument, the snare drum's an instrument, the rack tom's an instrument. And I think he's worked really hard to create this sound from these elements of his instrument that's cohesive. And he mics it in a similar way, where he typically, each song that we've worked on in the past is maybe slightly different, but generally what he ends up handing me is a microphone on the kick drum, a snare top mic, maybe a snare bottom mic, and then an overhead mic, or quote unquote a crotch mic, like a kit mic. They call it crotch mics because a lot of times you'll mic it right about at the crotch position of the drummer. So what we have in this song is we have a kick channel, a snare channel, and an overhead channel. Now they're stereo files, even though the elements aren't necessarily stereo. You can see actually on the kick drum, I am using this down mixer. It's an Avid plugin to sum the stereo into a mono channel. Why do I do that? Why don't I just process it as a stereo channel? Well, it's a mono signal. It was just printed as a stereo stem. And I find that sometimes I feel like I lose my phantom center, the center isn't as strong when it's a dual mono stereo channel rather than just a mono channel going down the middle. So I like to sum them. It also, what happens is you're using twice as much processing when you're processing a stereo channel as opposed to the more economical version of just processing one channel. So a bunch of different reasons why I did it, but and panning, stereo panning is so annoying. It's hard to get something truly left or truly right if you do want to end up doing that. With two pan knobs, it's much easier just to have one and lean it which way you want. So those are all my reasons why I did what I did. But on this kick drum channel, we have the down mixer, I have an SSL channel, an EQ channel, and a lo-fi channel. And I think that's pretty much what I did on all the drums. So the snare channel actually did have some stereo processing that Luke did. I assume I'm not sure, but I assume he probably put a snare top and snare bottom mic on his drums, and then printed those through some sort of effect, because there's a slight phaser on the snare channel, which gives you a stereo channel. So I didn't make them mono, because I would lose the production that Luke was doing. Similar thing for the overhead channel. I believe it's a mono overhead, but there's some stereo production built into the stem, so left it stereo. But again, SSL channel, strip, some EQ from the FabFilter Pro Q3, and then lo-fi on the snare channel, and then overhead is everything but the lo-fi as well. Balance those out to my drum bus, and on the drum bus I am processing it with the Shadow Hills UAD plugin. I really like this compressor. It is it's a fairly transparent compressor, and sometimes when you're using compressors on your drum bus, it can like zap the life out of your drum bus really quick, or reduce, your low end, or start to compress your low end quicker. I feel like this one, it's a very modern sounding compressor. It's a little more transparent in that it allows a lot of the low end to come through, especially when you have the sidechain filter in, which I actually don't have it in on this one. So maybe I was trying to clamp down on the full frequency band spectrum or something. But even with that filter out, I feel like the low end, it doesn't crush your low end like a lot of other compressors will, because there's so much energy in the low end that'll be the first thing that triggers your compressor to just, for lack of better words, neuter your sound. And then following the Shadow Hills, the Pultec, the old UAD legacy version of their Pultec. I like this one mostly because the newer version split the mid-band Pultec and the shelving Pultec EQ, and it's annoying to have two plugins, so I just always end up getting the legacy one. I think it sounds great. So also it's an EQ that has a very broad bandwidth, and I find even just slapping it on without really even adjusting the EQ, it will tighten up your low end, and give you a little more presence. So definitely a really cool plugin. So one that I use a lot more these days. It also helps me just to keep from over EQing something, because it's so broad and easy. If you want it a little brighter, you just open it up, it's easier than going down the rabbit hole of trying to narrowly dip out all these different frequencies and realize I just did something super unnatural and now the sound sounds super adulterated, so I like this EQ, and basically what I'm doing here looks like I'm boosting a little bit of the snare fundamental and some of the punch of the drums, opening up a little bit more of the diction of the drums. I am boosting and attenuating the top end a little bit, which is kind of a fun thing to do with the Pultec. That's another thing where the low end, you'll have a point and you can boost and attenuate at the same time, and it'll create these really interesting frequency curves and resonant points in your low end, and so that's kind of what I'm playing with here. Nothing super crazy, but let's do this. Let's solo up the drums and kind of walk through some of this stuff a little more. So I'm going to keep circling the chorus and solo up my drums. Here's what they sound like. Cool. And another interesting thing I'm hearing off the bat, I'm sure you are too, there's a little bit of guitar bleed. So potentially when Luke recorded this, he was recording it with the guitarist, which is cool, and something to embrace and not be worried about. Sometimes I see engineers get really like nervous about bleed and things like that. And at the end of the day, you would never have known that there's some guitar bleed on the drums, because when you're listening to the music, there's guitar in the music. So, but yeah, here's the kick drum. Let's I'll bypass everything and we'll kind of open it up as we listen. Cool. So some of the things I'm looking at and thinking about, you can also see just where my fader positions are for the drums. My kick drum is the lowest source. My snare drum is at -7, and my overheads are -2. So most of my drum sound is coming from the overhead mics. Again, another thing that I was doing is trying to make sure I was keeping the integrity of like the drum kit as an instrument. So it's not like this like super disparate kick drum to a snare drum to overheads, like splitting those things apart. I'm instead trying to do this like retro drum kit representation, but still have presence, still have like full frequency fidelity, low end, top end, like everything is big and impressive and fun to listen to, all the while though like keeping the integrity of like that like old drum kit person playing the drums sound. And I think some of that is like, we're not going to like super boost like the low end of the kick drum. We're gonna really want to just like feel it knocking, and that snare, I'm not going to like clean up a ton of the mid range. I'm gonna let it be like this like weighted like thing, yeah, so that's where we got the drums from. I don't know if you noticed when I unbypassed the Pultec, all of a sudden things became like very like present, and that's like a thing that I feel like the Pultec can really help with. So and not a huge move when I bypass and unbypass the Shadow Hills compressor. So we're not compressing it hard, but we are giving it just a little more oomph. So cool. Those are my drums. Let's move forward. Percussion, there's probably not a ton of math and science to the percussion. Let's see. You can't see it unless I zoom into the waveforms. Yeah, SSL channel strip. Looks like I'm kind of warming them up with the EQ, compressing them, fast attack, so I'm kind of like blurring them a little bit, so it's not so and more just like if that makes sense. Smoothing them out. Bongos similarly, to kind of give them a little more body, I'm taking off like a little bit of the initial attack, warming them up, taking some of the papery frequencies out, and boosting some of the fundamental. And this percussion FX channel, I bet you, yeah. So, okay, so I'm using this SSL stereo imager, making it like super wide, and this EQ shelf. So just making it a little brighter. Let's zero in on the FX, and we'll hear what that sounds like. Beautiful. So I just made that super wide, so it's kind of just like tickling the back of your ears when you're listening to it, which is, I'm sure, helping get above like this like very like warm fundamental music bed. So we'll solo these up for a second so you can just listen to them. Again, not huge moves from all of these things, just finding the balance of where it feels good. So maybe percussion with drums now. Cool. Yep. So there you go. You got something just kind of easily hanging out in the background, jamming. So it's not like, bongo and percussion and is solo, but they're definitely there and they're definitely rocking. Okay, bass guitar. So, yeah, the bass. This is I'm using some hardware instrument when I'm hardware processing when I'm processing some of these instruments, just because I felt like I wanted to try to breathe as much analog gear into this as possible. Wanted to make sure I wasn't doing anything like super unnatural, and analog gear usually helps make things feel a lot more natural because you're running it through like hardware and generally have like a limited scope of how fine you can tweak certain things in unnatural ways. So I'm summoning this stereo stem with the down mixer plugin again. I am using this hardware insert. So insert A5, it's just telling me what output and input it's coming from my interface. So it's doing a circle, and it's actually going to my distressor compressor in the studio. And I can pull up a settings page. So this is like a snapshot of my hardware. It's just a picture so that I can come back and adjust all my hardware knobs so that I can match where the bass was when I was mixing, because hardware, the annoying thing about hardware is you have to recall it physically, manually adjusting all the knobs on the piece of gear to recreate the sound exactly how it was. Now in digital, the benefit is you can adjust, automate, change, do whatever. You save, you open the session back up, and it's exactly where it was. That's the give and take with hardware versus digital a little bit. But you can see on the distressor, I'm not going to move my camera so you can see the actual unit, but it's right over here to my left. And it is matching these settings exactly. So 6:1 ratio, the input and output is set. It's a medium attack time, a quick release time, and it is being cued mostly by the mid-range of the guitar. So it's allowing a lot of the low end to come through without being compressed until we get some of that mid-range, and then it's locking into the drums or the bass guitar. So that is how it is being set. And then I have a little bit of EQ coming off of it, so a little multi-band equalization, compression, basically. I'll hold this open and we will kind of maybe bypass these plugins so you can kind of hear what's happening. So this was the raw bass guitar. Now with the distressor engaged. you can really hear it kind of grab it on those like snappy notes, which is exactly what it should be doing. It should be grabbing some of that mid-range. And I think really what I'm trying to do is compress and distress the bass guitar's mid-range so that it's really felt really present, so I can get it really loud without it being like overbearing. And then let's pull back this EQ as well. Cool. So, what am I looking for from the bass guitar? You know, obviously I want low end support, but it's playing a line. I want to hear the notes. I want to hear all of the rhythmic elements, and I want to hear like that mid-range richness coming through. So, I'm trying to make sure I'm getting those notes coming through. I'm giving myself still like a solid ground for the mix from that bass. But I'm not letting it get muddy. I'm letting it have plenty of diction, but I'm also not letting it be too like thin, plucky, like scratchy, annoying. You know, those are all bad adjectives as well. So cool. Okay, guitars. This is a guitar stem that I got. We're using the SSL channel strip. We're using the Chandler Limited Zener limiter. And we are using it in total harmonic distortion mode, which means it's not actually limiting, but it is adding a lot of saturation. And then we're using this little tiny EQ, so ducking a little bit over at 5.7K, and then kind of giving myself a broad like little lift on the top end. Let's bypass it so you can listen to what the guitar sounds like natural. Cool. So we also have this like baked into the stem, this like chorusy, like stereo thing that's happening. And so I think what I'm looking for from the guitar is to make sure I'm adding some presence to it because it is so like muted. And also just like giving it a little more weight so it feels a little grounded. So it's not just like so wispy, like out of the way, you know, because it's like a fundamental element of this entire song. You know, this song is drums, bass, guitar, pretty much. Drums, bass, guitar, vocals. So we've got to have this guitar be like grounding and filling out like the entire harmonic information for the entire song. So I'm going to start unbypassing these things. You'll hear what it's doing. Beautiful. We've all of a sudden got presence. It's doing exactly what I said I wanted to do. Yeah, it's holding its own. So, and it's working really well with the drums and the bass. Okay, so we got I don't know why I said four. Two different synthesizer channels as well. Let's look at those things. So synth A. Using the Chandler Zener limiter, and we are limiting it, and I'm kind of smashing it right now if I bypass it. Really wakes it up. Also using the Helios 69 EQ. So I'm boosting some of the top end, I'm boosting some of this 6K peak, and I'm rolling off some of the low end. This to me is a very like nostalgic EQ move. I feel like when I'm listening to old music. This Helios has like just like a classic air to it, but that like 6K kind of like bump is like, to me, it's just like when I listen to like orchestras, things like that from like older records, it seems like they like just dimed a lot of the 6K. So it can be an annoying move for sure, but it also can be like a very like easy way to add some like excitement to a sound. So I'll bypass this real quick. Yeah, it's like putting a smile on it, you know. It's just bringing it out a little bit more, giving it a little bit of teeth. So that's that. And then synth B, let's hear what this one sounded like. Cool. So these like kind of wet sounds, adding like some pretty intense stereo imaging to it just to kind of pull it outside of everything. And let's kind of mix this into everything that we have so far. Cool. Yeah. So all little tricks to try to make everything kind of work together, but also make themselves heard, give themselves presence, but also not step on other things' presence. It's like sculpting, you know, you're shaving off a little bit of this thing to add this other thing here, moving some of this mass to this section, you know, so that we have this like flow, this movement. And I think that's important. That's like everything. So, and then of course there's balance, you know, I've got my faders right here, and as I'm mixing, I'm constantly balancing and writing a lot of automation. So if I show you all my volume automation, you can see like I was writing each of these balances as they were happening while they were happening. You know, there's very little of like selecting a section and just turning it up or down. It's allowing myself to write it and then moving a fader to balance it in real time so that it feels really, really natural, you know? So, that's mixing. Hell yeah. Okay. So I said, everything's going to a music bed. Everything, all the instruments are coming to this music bed before they get printed with the vocals. I have a little trim here that's pulling down. I'm not using any limiting in this song. Another thing that I'm trying to do with this song is I'm trying to keep it era specific. So we're going for this kind of like retro vibe. So you'll notice like a lot of the things I'm doing are like an EQ channel strip or something like that that's got like a specific type of vibe, but it's also allowing me to make like broad swath changes without like changing the song. You know, we're not using transient shapers because transient shapers change what the element of the like that element of a song is fundamentally. We're not using like tons and tons of EQ bands to like carve out a different type of sound, you know. I'm using like era specific and broad swath like processing because all the sounds sound good, you know. They just need to be mixed together. So yeah, I'm using a trim just to turn down give myself a little more headroom. So I mix myself a little bit into a corner, so I just need to pull everything back a little bit before I hit this tape machine. It's the Waves J37. I don't use a lot of Waves plugins. I kind of don't love them. But there's a couple that I do use, and the J37 I think is a great plugin. So using the 811 formula at 15 IPS, hitting it decently hard. So I'm adding just like a little more saturation, getting some of that EQ curve and from the J37. And then this Mag EQ4, I love this EQ. It's a really great EQ. It can definitely be overused. You can use salt too much, but a good salt gets you a long way. So rolling off a little bit of this 160, pushing a little bit of the subs, and then adding this like 10K airband, which is a very like musical, natural, like adds just like the like paprika to everything. So I will bypass these two things. The trim is just a volume thing, so I'm not even going to worry about that, and I'll add them in and you can hear the difference. Yeah, so it's interesting. I feel like this J37 adds a lot of saturation, but it also makes it like feel a little lo-fi because we're like reducing some of the top end at the expense of some of that saturation. So this EQ4 is still keeping it nice and open. We're not going to make it lo-fi, but we are going to have the elements of like old nostalgic sounds very present, So, yeah. Okay, moving on to the vocals. Thank you all for hanging in there. I'm going to pour myself a little more tea. Glug, 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 glug. Cool. All right, so these are the vocals that I received from Luke. So our choruses, I might have labeled them edited. Yeah. So let's see what they were before they were edited. Yeah, I think I just need to make some edits because there were like mouth noises, things like that built into it. And I'm just going through and cleaning them up generally. But we are using, so our signal flow, our signal chain for the vocals. We got an EQ, controlling some of the resonant low end bottom stuff and then opening it up top. SSL channel strip, again doing a lot more top end stuff. I believe these vocals, I might be slightly wrong, but I know a lot of vocals that Luke does is the Electro Voice 635, the hammer mic. So it's a dynamic microphone, an old dynamic microphone going through a 1073, and adding a lot of the 1073 saturation. So hitting the input transformers pretty hard with this microphone, and then printing that. So it's a very nostalgic sound. It's not a very hi-fi sound, but I think with Luke's voice it works really, really well because you get this like kind of like grainy but present and intimate vocal sound from Luke. It's not clean, but it is very interesting and fun. So but with that comes like it's very rolled off, it's very like lo-fi, and so I'm trying to open this up gently with different types of EQs and different points of bands. So yeah, that's what's happening. A little bit of compression happening on the SSL channel strip. Another EQ, looks like I'm taking care of my sibilants with this, so all of the that's being taken care of. A little bit of the telephony mid-range, and these are dynamic again, so they're only equalizing when those frequencies push above a certain threshold for them. So when they start building up, it'll start to EQ based on how much they're building up. So more build up, more EQ. Less build up, less EQ. No build up, no EQ. Using the Slate Digital Fresh Air plugin. It's a free plugin. It's kind of like it adds like a top end harmonic EQ stuff, so it'll add kind of the like poppy spicy thing. And then this is just some notches, probably some resonances. So I'm going to bypass all this and we'll listen to the chorus. There's still aux sends going to effects, but this is the raw vocal basically.
But there's no time, can't be too far, above us they'll climb.
Ooh, I forgot to tell you also, these are doubled vocals obviously, and one's on the left and one's on the right. I just summed them into a stereo track, so.
Rain on these eyes, but there's no time, can't be too far, above us they'll climb. They don't stay on while facing time.
Okay, I'm going to start unbypassing things.
Rain on these eyes, but there's no time. Can't be too far, above us they'll climb. They don't stay on while facing time. Rain on these eyes, but there's no time. Can't be too far.
Cool, so they're a little thinner, but with this like really thick music bed, I think that is what we need to make them really pop out of the speakers in the way that we need them to. So with the music.
Rain on these eyes, but there's no time. Can't be too far, above us they'll climb. They don't stay on while facing time. In our body, what will they done?
Sorry, I think I just talked while my mic was bypassed the whole time. What I was saying is one other thing I did with the lead vocals that was kind of special is we have a front room that is kind of enclosed in glass. It's kind of like a funny sounding room. But I put a speaker out there and I ran the vocals through the speaker and put a mic in that room. And so I recorded what that room sounded like with the vocals in it. And you've got this kind of like roomy, conical sounding vocal. And I mixed that vocal in. So let me solo up that vocal and you can kind of listen to it.
Rain on these eyes, but there's no time.
It's like a little megaphony. It's a little roomy. But then that mixed in with the lead. I'll start with just the lead and then add the reamped sound.
Rain on these eyes, but there's no time.
You've got this kind of like extra body that's coming in, which I think is so cool and adds to like we're putting this vocal in a place, we're not. It's not a vocal that was recorded later after the band. It's in a room, it's grounded in that way. So all like little tricks to make this happen. Okay, so we'll keep moving. The verse vocals, let's see, what's the difference with this? Basically it's the same thing that I did on the chorus, but I have like a little delay throw from the Echo Boy. This Benson Cross syncopator, I love using this. It kind of just breaks the vocal apart. It's a preset in the Echo Boy presets, but yeah, let's listen to that. You can see the mix knob automate up and louder.
We'll all return to the source. Rain on these eyes.
Amazing. I love that. So easy way to kind of just transition from one section to the other, just kind of source breaks it up. So in context with everything.
Will all return to the source. Rain on these eyes.
Something you probably wouldn't pick up on, but it really cues for the listener, like, oh, we're moving past this, we're going to land on the chorus, you know. Tricks like that, I think, are worth everything. So, in figuring out ways to kind of connect those dots, that's one of my favorite things to do. Okay, anything else I want to talk about on these vocals? You're really getting the full purview of everything. Let's see. I do have a send going to this thing that's called verse air. Let's see what that is. That is... I'm adding a little bit of the octave of the vocal with a little bit of the formant on it. So let me do this pre so that I can solo up this effect. And you can hear kind of what I'm adding on the verse vocals.
What has grown will also be of a lonely hour.
Cool. So this like fake kind of like high vocal. I'm going to make that not pre. We'll solo up the verse and you'll see if you can hear it kind of pushing its way through.
What has grown will also be of a lonely hour. And I know that I can see my own. Just like that I can.
You can hear it just on the ends of his verses. There's like an extra little bit of like top end harmonic information. I think that kind of makes that vocal a little bit extra special too. I'm sending that vocal to a reverb as well. So I'm kind of like creating this like just like high end shadow off of him. You know, it's a different way than just like trying to dig these harmonics out of his vocal and make it too bright, you know, but I'm brightening it up by adding these like fake harmonics to his vocal, you know. So different ways to kind of get like an edge on the mix. Okay, cool. We'll move on. Background vocals. It looks like I'm sending them all to at least this group to a bus. It's a multi-band compressor, taking care of some of the low-end muddiness, woofiness, and then probably boosting a little bit of the top end. Mag EQ doing the same kind of thing. Let's solo them up and bypass and do that thing. Cool. Just lifting them out of the mix a little bit. This one doing the same exact thing. Such cool vocal parts. The vocals on this is just amazing. And then this one doing something, let's see, slightly different. Looks like I have some automation happening with some effects. Let's bypass what I got going on. Cool. So really just putting these vocals in this like chamber by using this Echo Boy, some of this like chorusy, echoey thing. And then I'm also using this Outer Space 2 plugin, which Luke actually had some things that he wanted specifically for this record using this specific plugin. And so I got it for this record and I've been using it ever since. But it kind of, to me, it does like one thing really well. It's not like a great like echo, and it's not like a great like reverb, but it is like a really nice, like nostalgic, like diffuser, you know. So it has the echo, it has the reverb, it has 3 different echoes. It's all like tape based echo, you know, so it's not super exact, which is nice, you know. So it's an easy way to add some like diffusion and ambience and keep things from feeling super focused. And then I'm also using the RC20 to add a little bit of mid-range distortion, a little more space, reverb, and width, and also some fluttery stuff. So kind of just keeps the vocals moving. They don't feel very stagnant, but they also feel like they're moving in this like washy space. So we'll listen to it one more time. Nothing on it. Cool, and you can hear me ramp up the intensity of that delay a little bit. But I'm kind of wiggling it the entire time, recording some like fluctuations and things like that, because that's how you that's how you get something to sound real. Everything is abnormal. That's the world we live in. Nothing is like a program clean, you know, hall number 1, you know. Everything has like its synchronicities, I think is the word I'm looking for. And so introducing those like elements of chaos into a song actually might make it feel like a lot more real, a lot more intentional, a lot more meaningful. So I do that through mixing like a lot of different ways. So okay, wow, we're almost there. Let's see, Echo Boy. It looks like I just bypassed and unbypassed it, probably because I needed something a little more ambient for the chorus versus the verse for these background vocals. Let's listen to them. Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Okay, so the only thing left to talk about is 2 things. The auxiliary effects that I have. So I'm throughout the song, I'm sending most of my effects. I'm not putting on the actual element in the song. I am using a bus to send a part of that audio to a fully wet signal to mix like room version of itself, a hall version of itself, slap delay, echo, chorus, that kind of thing. And what I'm using on this song, I'm using a lot of Valhalla. I think the Valhalla stuff is really great if you're looking for something that's like a little older, a little more natural. You know, they do have like more modern 1980s and more modern sounding reverbs, more digital sounding reverbs, but to me the special stuff, I have like other things that do that. The 480L lexicon unit and IR convolutions and things like that, but to get like something that's like a little more nostalgic, a little more 1970s, I reach for the Valhalla. So we have a room delay. It's kind of a big room, 1.45 seconds. For my hall, I'm using a slightly smaller hall, but the hall mode. I've got a slap delay that I'm using. It's a tape slap, 15 IPS, classic, you know. Back in the day, they'd run, you know, a vocal to another tape deck running at 15, and it would take a second for the playhead and the sync head to match up, and that distance would be the 15 IPS delay distance. And so that's like a very classic sound. A lot of country records use that 15 IPS delay sound. An echo delay, this is just a quarter note, bop, 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 set to like a telephone filter, so it kind of cuts through, and it's also going through some of the reverbs. And then this chorus, I'm sure I'm only using a little bit of this in the mix, but this is a very like out of tune chorusy effect, so I have, but these are all the effects. These 5 effects are the 5 effects that I'm using throughout this song. And then finally, my mix bus. What do I have on my mix bus? I have a hardware insert, so it's running this entire mix through my SSL analog color fusion bus. I'm going to pull up that screenshot again. This is where all of my settings are. So pulling back the input trim a little bit, I've got my filter at 30 hertz. So anything below 30 hertz is starting to get filtered out. Using a little bit of the vintage drive module, lifting 20K up just a touch. This high frequency compressor, so this is going to compress at a bell around 8K, 9K kilohertz, that is, and at a pretty frequent spot on my threshold. So that's going to help with like some cymbal sibilance and some vocal sibilance, things like that. My stereo imager, I'm making it a little wider, but I'm taking the space down a little bit, and I find what that does is like it kind of strengthens my phantom center while still giving me like a little bit more of like wings to my mix, some width to my mix. So it's giving me like a stronger center while pulling the things that are panned hard left and right a little farther out. So it's kind of doing this like 3-dimensional pull to my mix, and it's subtle, but it is helpful. And then I am going through the transformer on the SSL as well. So I can actually bypass the hardware real quick, and we can kind of hear the difference between going through the SSL and going not through the SSL. So I'll do that right now. So this is bypass. And this is unbypassed. Cool. So yeah, there's some extra saturation, opening it up a little bit more, giving it a little more life, but it's not huge. It's a subtle move. And then I'm using this EQ at the end too. So this is just a little tiny little movements, grabbing some of my muddy mid-range and grabbing some of my harsh, like pointy stuff. So that's the mix. That's literally everything that went into this mix. There's no other secrets. I'm trying to think of anything else that I'm missing. No, that's everything. So it's pretty crazy because at the end of the day, again, the song is 3 drum mics, a little bit of percussion, a bass guitar, a guitar track, 2 synth tracks, and some vocals. But you've got this like very like punchy, lush like environment, and a lot of that is because of Luke's arranging, Luke's production, and then just with the mix, making sure everything is like supporting each other, and just adding presence and making it like comfortable for the listener to hear. So yeah. If you have any questions about this, definitely let me know in the comments on Patreon. I sometimes see the comments from the YouTube videos as well, but if you're watching it, you're probably watching it through the Patreon. So leave comments on the Patreon if you want. And if there's anything that you would like to know more about, anything like that, let me know. And I'm sure on a future live stream I will add those elements. But thank you so much for watching. Hope this was fun. Happy mixing. Go stream the single 1,000 times. Go listen for the next one.